Okay. No gameplay this week, no code this week. We're just going to talk about game design and kind of like talk about the different aspects. So Land Trains is a hybrid of a tower defense game and a snake game. I like to describe it as snake with guns because that sounds topical at the moment. But Pal World is like a big thing right now, which is like Pokemon with guns. So it's just a joke really. It's really tower defense plus snake. It has some roguelike aspects, but we'll go into why those are there because I don't think they're necessary. The roguelike aspects I don't think are necessarily as good for the game, but I think that the mechanics that are facilitated are worthwhile. So let's talk about some of the things that are interesting from a snake perspective, right? We care about enemy snake. The reason we care about enemy snakes is because snake likes to fight against enemy snakes. Like it's an interesting gameplay mechanic. Um, right, another thing that's important for snake is it has to be long. Right, if snake isn't a, what are you doing? If your snake isn't long, the game becomes trivial in a way. Right, so we want to facilitate something that forces things to be long. Whereas on the tower defense side, we care about things like economy. Right, we want to upgrade towers. We like to kill lots of small enemies. All of these things don't really add to the snake gameplay loop. Right? Snake doesn't get better with small enemies. Snake doesn't get better with upgrading towers or introducing economy. So what you want to figure out is like, or talk about, is things that are going to end up in here, where both the tower defense aspects as well as the snake aspect are having enhanced gameplay. Right. So for instance, health is another one of these concepts that is very much a tower defense concept. It is not a snake concept. Why would that be health? Like you die when you eat your tail. But if we say that your max health is tied to your length, right? Then now we have something interesting. Now we have something where we can say like, hey, health creates max length. Right? By introducing the health concept, we create a reason why you want your snake to be longer, and max health is going to lead to a longer snake, which is going to facilitate this gameplay aspect we want to see on the snake side. We want long snakes. If we don't have long snakes, then, you know, snake isn't very interesting, and the map is too big, and things become trivial, and, you know, unfortunate things like that. It's too big. Let's do it like that. And let's make another color. Okay, so sure. Let's talk about active powers, right? Because those are getting introduced into the game. They are not really making life better for Snake or for tower defense, right? I don't think it like harms super much, but it's not really. It probably hangs out over here as long as you design them with that mindset. But what we do want to do is on the snake side, right? We know that snake gameplay gets better in confined space. Actually, tower defense gameplay gets better in confined space too, because that's where you want to upgrade your towers, because you can't just have a infinite number of cheap towers to do everything. So we want things that can create confined space. Right, this is where events come in. An event is like a structure on the map that you have to stay close to. And if you stay close to it, you complete the event. And if you complete the event, then the event is going to reward you with an active power or a passive power or something like that. Right? So this is an example where active powers by themselves probably shouldn't be in the game. But because it creates an excuse to have these events, and these events create confined space, and this is leading to the good gameplay from a snake perspective, we are creating things that both enhance the tower defense aspects and the snake aspects. And in this case, we just pay a little bit of tax. Boss battles, I think, are important for good snake gameplay, but are not as important on the tower defense aspect. Right, but boss battles kind of are turning into have an RTS aspect to it, and tower defense is effectively an abstracted simplification of RTS games. All right, so let's talk about the lower decks. I don't know, the get is super long. So we have lower decks, and the lower decks. Let's put a note over here. So lower deck can do 4 things. 1, more damage. Oh, thank you, Lucid. 2, better pickup range. 3, more gems, less length. And then 4, we have some healing. Okay. And this is where like some of the things I'm not sure I like how they're going to be set up. But lower decks are interesting from a tower defense aspect, right? Because these are your support towers. If we look at something where we increase pickup range, increase pickup range, I mean, it doesn't really hurt. It does hurt snake. Increase pickup range hurts snake actually quite a bit. Because if we increase the pickup range, what ends up happening is that you are less incentivized to navigate exactly to where you want to go. So, but increased pickup range does lead to longer snakes. Right? You pick up more of the resources, you automatically grow once you pick up 4 chests. It's the current implementation. So you get a longer snake. So it's not all bad, right? And our increased pickup range, like if you look at the lower deck damage, it's effectively a cheap, unupgradable damage option. It has a little bit of a different firing mechanism. More gems, less length. Well, the thing to keep in mind, because this is like core economic trade-offs, right? So it's interesting from that perspective. But there's a couple things that happen. If you pick up more of these, you can upgrade your towers more. Right, so that's a good thing. It has a negative interaction with length, right? Because what's going to end up happening, make it a different color. Ooh, some serious regret. Blue is going to be negative now. Bad. We have some negative interactions with length, right? Because you can stop growing your snake. If you stop growing your snake and turning everything into gems and you just upgrade all your towers all the way, you can make a really sweet terrain with lots of really high powered towers. The tricky thing is that if you do that, you're stuck with the issues related to your health, right? Because all of these lower decks are going to drive a desire for more, for a longer snake, right? Because the more lower deck spots you have, you get a longer snake. To get to the point where your snake stops growing, you need like 20 of these things, but then you get a lot of gems out of the deal. Everything you pick up is going to be gems. But if you've built 20 of these lower decks, your pickup range is 1. Your max health is fixed. You're not healing from growing your train. And you have no passive regeneration. Right, so this is a balancing aspect to try and mitigate this negative interaction. And kind of give people a little bit of control of not letting the snake get like insanely long. But it also, by tying the health to the length, we can mitigate this as well. And now for the one that I have absolutely no idea about, this is going to be the healing one. Why do I have healing? Does it make tower defense better? Probably not. Does it make snake better? Probably a little bit, right? Because you can ignore smaller enemies more with the healing. It offsets it quite a bit, and you can focus more on the snake gameplay. So it's going to be important that these lower decks are useful enough that it forces people to build longer snakes, but not too useful to the point where people can stop growing their snake or have a 20 segment snake that just obliterates everything. Now, if you have a 20 segment snake that's obliterating everything, that means that you have no health coming in. So every point of damage you take is going to be permanent. So it's going to be quite bad. Anyway, this is kind of like the different parts that we're dealing with right now. I'm currently working on implementing events. I have very little to show for that. But I have found that there's a need to create more of the confined space, which is why these events are essential. And this is kind of how there is a area where there is some synergy between snake and tower defense, and that partially this has to be induced by things like events, which then have somewhat of a drawback of like having to put something in there for people to want. But yeah, this is kind of the different concepts and how I'm thinking about the gameplay and how the gameplay is gonna work. Anyway, as far as what I'm hoping to get done this week, effectively what I was hoping to get done last week. I think I added a timer. That's it. So yeah, this is totally filler.